Sometimes we're not ourselves. There's no one I can turn to. And I know all the feelings that we shared are in the past. And I know your relationships are never meant to last. And I'll take some time, but I'll be alright. We're moving on. We're moving on. I know time's hard to let, but I've had enough. We're moving on. We're moving on. We're moving on.
Hello, welcome everyone. Now we're about to start our third and last live stream. In the past few days, we covered the Optimist World Team Championship, where US has taken victory. And today we will look at the final day of the fleet racing, which will also wrap up the World Championship as a whole. Right now in the back, you can see that the Gold Fleet has already started their race. They're going towards the first mark, and it looks like the right-hand side paid off. We will get a closer look at them in the second mark. Now, this is the individual race, and it looks like in the leaderboard, overall, we have first place for Ukraine, second for Sweden, and third for USA. And in the girls' classification, we have first place for Greece, second for Turkey, and third for Brazil. Now, this is the final day, and the points gaps are very, very close. Honestly, anything could happen, and there's only one discard, and it looks like, looking at the top three, they already discarded some pretty big scores. So in a gold fleet of 70 boats, speaking from experience, anything could happen. Even if there's a 15-point, 20-point gaps, those points in 2 races could easily be closed. And we will see what happens. Now we have also a sea breeze like yesterday, so we have different people at the front of the fleet, so that could change up the leaderboards. And we will see what happens today. And let's start our live stream for the fleet race. Thank you. Hello again. Currently, we are watching the Gold Fleet coming towards the second mark, coming reach. In first place, we see a sailor from Chile. And then in second, it looks like it is Germany. And we will be able to see the sails and the numbers. Because this time it's not only the country, but also the number, the individual sailor that matters, as this is not fleet racing anymore, but individual races. So we have Spain, Switzerland, France, Greece, and Italy coming as well, followed by Netherlands, another Greek sailor, So we have a nice sea breeze right now. And it looks like it will, the wind will pick up even more in the afternoon, so in the following race or towards the end of this one. And now we can see the first boat is already turning the mark. For Switzerland, Spain, France, Greece, okay, we see that the Greek girl, as being the first girl, already rounded up the mark, followed by the Turkish girl, who's second in the girls. We still can't see anyone from top three that rounded the mark yet. Okay, now we have the overall Ukrainian, who's the first overall, just turned up the second round mark. And it looks like he's around top 10. And the rest of the fleet is also coming by. Now, as we said earlier, anything could happen in a gold fleet, especially last day, as a lot of people already used their chances of having a bad race in the discard. So this is the golden fleets, where only the best 69 sailors are racing against each other. So each point counts even more than the qualifications. Now we are still searching for the rest of our top 3 and even our top 10. And this is the second mark. So still many things change in the downwind and in the second upwind. Okay, so now it looks like we see Eric Scheid from Lithuania is about to round the mark. He's currently in the 4th position, and the points are really close. So with this race, the leaderboard will probably change up quite a lot. Now we're coming towards the end of the fleet. Most of the fleet is going downwind, and they are mostly using the left-hand side of the downwind. And we also saw that the right-hand side during the upwind. We will also be able to see the finish line, so how the positions have changed during downwind and the second upwind. But we can say, as this is half of the race, if you are at the very back of the fleet, you have a lot of catching up to do. But obviously, the race ends at the finish line. So during the downwind and second upwind, you can do a lot of catch-up. But I think what we saw today was good proof that the leaderboard can change quite a lot, and that with different conditions, you have different people coming in the front of the fleet. And with points being so close to each other and racing in the gold fleet in the final day, where a lot of people already used their chance of having a bad race, which is discarded, so not counted in the final calculation of their score. things could change very fast and easily. So the pressure is really on for the top sailors. And also the ones who are just outside the podium who have the chance to finals and top 3, top 5. Now we are watching the Gold Fleet going downwind. With numbers being so important, it is harder to spot the sailors that are currently racing for the medal. But we can say that in the top 10, there weren't many of the top 3. Actually, we can say that the girls, the first girl from Greece and the second girl from Turkey, came before the first 3 overall boys. So I guess these conditions were better for them. Also, another point for the single discard. We used to have 2 discards, and discard, as I say, is the fact that your worst race is not counted in the final calculation of your points. And in sailing, the one who wins is the one who have the least points, because you have the points of your score at the finish line. So if you finish first, you have 1 point. If you finish 25th, you have 25 points. So your worst race not being counted is very important. But now that we only have 1 discard, it means that consistency is even more important. So now we look at the top 3, and they discarded very large scores, such as 50 or even more. But for instance, in the people who have in the 4th or 5th position had discards that were lower, like around 20, 24. So if the top 3 has a bad race, and then the others have a better race, consistency will pay off, and they can jump up in the leaderboard super fast. Now we're seeing the Silver Fleet coming towards the 2nd mark. Now, the ones in the Silver Fleet do not have a chance of medal, because once you're in the Silver Fleet, no matter what are your results, you cannot go above the last sailor from the Gold Fleet. So the 3 first days were qualifications, where they decided who will be in the Gold, Silver, Bronze, and Emerald Fleets. And now the 3 finals race are where the best sailors from the Gold Fleet are racing against each other, and the second best group from Silver Fleet racing against each other, and so on. So what really matters for the results today is the Gold Fleet only. Now, looking at the leaderboard, we saw that the first boat in the Gold Fleet from Chile does not really have a chance for a medal, but finishing first in the Gold Fleet obviously helps a lot in the leaderboards. And the Optimist World Championships, because they're such a big fleet, it is actually the top 20 that is awarded, the top 3 having the medals, and the top sailor having the trophy of Optimist World Championship. Now, for the Silver Fleet, we have the first sailor from Hungary, the second one from It is harder to see, but if I'm not mistaken, it's from Bulgaria, and there's actually quite a lot of gap between them and the rest of the fleet. Now, looking ahead, the Gold Fleet is getting closer and closer to the round mark for the third mark. And actually, I think the top 10 is already turning the mark. And we will get a closer look at them when they're coming to the finish line to see in which position the top 10 and the top 20 actually have finished, and see how the leaderboard have changed in the first race. Yes, after the third mark, we can see that the majority of sailors are once again using the right-hand side of the course. It is too far away to see which sailor is where and in which position. But choosing the right mark at the downwind and going towards the right side is once again very important for the last upwind. As obviously it is the Gold Fleet, so there wasn't a lot of gap between the boats. It is a close fleet, and there are almost 70 boats. So anything could happen. Choosing the right mark in the downwind could help you a lot. Now, waiting up for the gold fleet to come closer and to see what are the positions, we can go over the top 10 of our leaderboard. So in first place, I'm only going to call out by their names and not their surnames to avoid butchering anyone's surname. And I'm really sorry if I do so. But we have Daniel from Ukraine in first position with 54 points. Then Henrik from Sweden with 59 points. Then James from USA with 62 points. Then we have following in fourth position Eric from Lithuania with 67 points. Then Francesco from Italy with 74 points. So we can see how points are actually pretty close. And then we have in sixth position Weka from Thailand. Seventh position Svietsovlav from Ukraine. Eighth position Malcolm from Sweden. Ninth position Victor from Norway. And 10th position Axel from Denmark, followed by Greece, Brazil, and 3 Italian boats covering top 15. So especially among the top 4, the points are very, very close. And considering that this is, once again, final eight in the gold fleets, when sailors have already discarded that were their worst race, which looks like actually adds a lot of points to their scoreboard, their final calculation of their points. It is extremely close. And knowing that even 15 or 20 points could be close very easily in a gold fleet, we can say that the leaderboard could switch up entirely today. And for the girls, the first girl is in 24th position. It is Chrysola from Greece. In second, we have Medina Hava from Turkey in 30th position. And then for the third girl, we have Joanna from Brazil in 53rd position. Now, obviously, the point gaps between the girls is bigger than the top 3 overall. However, it is still not big enough to make any assumptions on the final results of the girls. We just saw that the Greek girl and the Turkish girl were doing pretty well in the first race, and they were pretty close. So we'll see what happens there. We couldn't spot the girl from Brazil, as it is harder to spot with the numbers, because obviously we saw a lot of sailors from Brazil, but if you cannot read the number, it doesn't really matter at this point, because it could be anyone from Brazil. But we will see what happens. Now, as a reminder, currently the top 4 have discarded pretty large scores, 50 or even more. So if they have a bad race today, they will likely keep whatever score they have. If it's not worse than their earlier bad score, in that case, they will keep the earlier discarded points, which is around 50. And then starting from the 5th position with the first Italian boat, he discarded a way smaller result, which is, if I'm not mistaken, 24. So in that case, even if he scores badly, he has a better chance because he was more consistent, and consistency is pretty much key in a fleet race where you only have one discard. So we can say that he has a chance and the opportunity, like more than the top 4, to have a bad race, where he could still have a decent point overall. Where if the top 4, in case they have a bad race, well, they will be keeping that race, and that could be a big disadvantage for them. So right now, the consistent sailors that discarded a smaller score are in advantage, especially if they race well today. But even if they race not so well, they still have the chance to not to count that bad race. So especially towards the last days, we see how consistency plays a key role in defining the leaderboard. Because you could have amazing scores, but if you have 3 bad races, well, then you would keep keep those scores, and well, your good scores do not matter as much. Currently, we're watching the bronze fleets rounding up the second mark, and we're still waiting for the gold fleet to come closer to see what happens there. They are getting closer to the finish line. They already went a bit more than half of the last upwind. Rounding up the second mark, we had a sailor from Chile rounding up first, and then we had Sweden, and then in top 10 we had I think 2 sailors from Greece, 1 from USA, and then an Italian. So we'll see if they manage to keep their places in the fleet and who managed to get a bit in front, having a good downwind and the last upwind. Because at the end of the day, what really matters is how you finish. All right, hello again. Now we are currently seeing coming towards the finish line. Now we will try to see who is top 10 in this race, and we will also try to spot our top 10 in the leaderboard to see what they're doing and how the leaderboard could change. So in looking like in the first place, we have a sailor from Greece. But we cannot say who they are as we cannot really see. But I imagine this Greek sailor is the one that rounded up the second mark in top 10. Now, as they are coming towards closer to the finish line, we can really see how there's actually kind of a line coming from the right-hand side once again. Sorry, so the first boat is still from Chile. Second up, we have from Greece. Now the first boat is about to cross the finish line, and it is from Chile. So congratulations for him. He will definitely go a big time in the leaderboard. Now, second sailor is from Switzerland. Which is once again not a sailor in top 20. Now, then Greece, followed by France. Now, the French line was currently 16th on the leaderboard. He will definitely round up. We're still looking for our top 10, which still no one has crossed the finish line from the current top 10. So we have Italy, 97-12, which is Francesco Carrieri, that was in 5th position today. And then we have Ukraine, 311, that was in 7th position. Netherlands, then now we have a big group crossing. We can see the Turkish girl who was in 2nd in girls today now crossing the finish line. We'll now look if the Greek one also crossed, which was first, who was 1st in girls this morning. Okay, now we just saw the boy from the USA that was in 3rd position crossing the finish line. Now we can see how different sailing conditions have changed the top 15 at the finish line. Now we just saw the first boy from Ukraine crossing the finish line in a position that is not in top 10. We'll see. We're still looking for the Sweden 4881. That was in 2nd position this morning. If we have not missed him in the big group, which is possible, it looks like Sweden, Henrik from Sweden, is not having a great first race. Now we have the second half of the fleet crossing the finish line. It is obviously very packed, so there's a chance that we might have missed some people that entered the finish line with the group. So it would be wrong to assume some of the top sailors in this morning's leaderboard how they finished today's race, but we can definitely say that the leaderboard will change quite a bit looking at the top 10 of this race, not matching exactly the top 10 of the leaderboard. now we can see the Lithuanian sailor that is about to cross the finish line in the back of the fleet. Definitely second half, which is not a good start for him for the final day, as he was in fourth position with very tight points with the top 10. He had a black flag, so he will not be discarding this race, and he will keep whatever the score he will have from this race for his final calculations. Now we're also seeing Norway 40-60. I think we should check to be sure. Well, if that's him, he was also in ninth position. So it actually looks like the top 10 of today's leaderboard is not having a great start in today's final race. Now, this was the first race. We will see how the leaderboard has changed. And then one last race for the gold fleet. And we will know who will be this year's Optimist World Champion. Now, I think since the leaderboard has mixed quite a lot after this race, it is pretty heated. Coaches will start to calculate what happens, how many points they need to go up the leaderboard. If they still have a chance to win a medal, and without having too much time, sailors will have to start their second race, give their all, as this will be the final race. And as we just saw, anything could happen even in a single race in terms of points that are already pretty tight, because the sailing conditions are different from other days. The points are really close, and they're all racing against the top group in the World Championship. It is a very packed fleet with almost 70 sailors. So in the upwind, going to the wrong side or missing one group with one tack actually does change a lot of points, because you can have a lot of boats coming up in front of you at the mark. We will see if we can have the results before the start of the second race. If we do, we will tell you what happens and which sailor needs to do which score in order to have the title of world champion, who will be in top 3 or top 10. And if not, we will also have to see what happens in the second race, obviously. And underlying one last time, as anything could happen in any race, I think today will show how truly being consistent is rewarding. Because sailors that were not in top 3, not top 10, maybe not even top 5, can still have the chance to win the championship if they are consistent enough. As top sailors already discarded their worst race, there are pretty large scores if they have a bad race today, and it looks like some of them did. Well, the leaderboard will change dramatically. Hello, everyone. Welcome back. Now we are watching the second and final race of the day, as well as the World Championship. As we can see, it is once again the right-hand side that pays off better. Now this is the gold fleet going towards the first mark. And we can only see from this side, so we cannot really say who's in which position, which will determine the leaderboard for good now. We're still waiting for the official results of the first day of this race to come to say what happened in the leaderboard, but what we're expecting is to see the Ukrainian sailor who was in 7th position this morning to go up, as well as the Italian sailor who was in 5th position. And lastly, the sailor from Thailand, who was once again in top 10, 6th position to be exactly, to go up. So we have actually the 5th, 6th, and 7th sailors of this morning that scored the best in today's first race. And so we're expecting the leaderboard to change quite a lot, especially in overall. Now, coming from the girls, we saw that the Greek sailor who was leading this morning and the Turkish sailor who was in 2nd position were very close in the first race and were doing good. Now we're expecting the Turkish girl to now lead with a couple points, followed by the Greek sailor. So it honestly comes down to what happens in this final race. So we'll have a closer look at them and also to the top 10 of this morning and top 15 of this final race to see what happens in overall and in the boys. Today, as you can see, we have a nice breeze. So sailors are hiking. And it is pretty good conditions for sailing, actually, especially for fleet racing, because as we said, in the team racing, it is better to have light wind, but that is very different in individual racing. So in individual racing, obviously, it depends on personal preferences of the sailors, their weights, their strength and weaknesses. But what is considered to be champagne sailing conditions is pretty much the conditions that we're seeing right now. Once again, the fleet is very close. We don't really see anyone having a major gap with the other ones, and the top group is not very far away, as well as the last group. So as the fleet is very close, it means that whatever happens in the first mark, anything could change towards in the second mark, third mark, and the last upwind. Especially with these conditions. Now the gold fleet is coming closer and closer towards the first mark, and we can see how all sailors are having their positions on the right ley line. So that's why we can see that they are all line, which is not always the case going towards the mark, because it's not right before the mark, and we can see how they are, like all of them are on the right ley line, and there is basically no one coming from the left. So we can see that today it was really the right side that paid off. And the leader also comes from the right-hand side. We cannot see who it is. We will have a closer look at the second mark, as we did before. But we are at the round marking of the first mark in the final race of the World Championship. And this race will determine who will get the medals tonight. Both in overall and in the girls category. Now almost everyone rounded the first mark. They're all coming towards the second, and we can see how close the group is. So we'll have a very close round marking in the second, which means that the positions within this race could change quite quickly. And sailors will have to give it all, because obviously, even though the first mark kind of marks the first lining up in the leaderboard and how the race is going, so it is pretty important. The race ends at the finish line, and there are a lot of situations where sailors could lose their positions when they're on top, and could also come back from the back of the fleet. So this is the very last race. They have to give their all, and we'll see who will do the best in today's conditions. Now, as sailors are coming closer, we will be able to read the country codes and the sail numbers and see what's the situation. Unfortunately, in fleet racing, we cannot follow the race as closely and minute by minute as we did in the team race because it's a much bigger course. We have not 8 sailors but 70. And the race is not 10 minutes but to 45 minutes to an hour. So it is a way different situation and it is way harder to follow, but we will do our best to give the latest news. So what we're seeing right now is in first position, it is hard. I saw that in third or second position, it is a boat from Thailand. And if we can see the number, we can see if it's the Thai sailor who was sixth in today's first results. Now we have a Czech sailor coming in. And then we're trying to see our top 10 of the day to see what they are doing in these races. So now the leading sailor is a sailor from USA. We'll have to see the sail number to confirm if it's whether the sailor who was third this morning. And it isn't. It is a different sailor. However, it looks like the sailor who was third this morning from USA is still in top 10, so it's doing. We have a Czech sailor and then the Thai sailor coming in, which is not the one who was sixth this morning. Now we see the sailor from Lithuania who was fourth this morning and who had a bad first race. He's also coming in top 10. So we'll see if he'll do good enough in this race to still be in top 10. Now we can see that the first sailor from the USA has a gap with the second sailor and then the rest of the fleet. Now it looks like the leader of this race was 20th in today's first results. Now since it is the top 20 that is awarded, it looks like after this race, depending on what he did in the first race, he will go up in the leaderboard. So we have the Greek sailor coming in, Mexican, and then the Swedish, who was not second this morning. Okay, yes, it is confirmed. The third sailor from this morning is just rounded in top 10. Now we have to look where the Italians are going, whereas Ukrainian 274, who was leading this morning. And also okay, we just saw the first girl from Turkey just put up the mark. And also the from Ukraine that was first this morning just rounded up the second mark. See that the leaderboard will change dramatically this morning, especially in the overall. Now we're still searching for the top 10 sailors within the group, but it is harder to spot and it looks like it is very different. Now we are coming towards the end of the Gold Fleet, and now they're going downwind towards the marks. And well, now it is more of a scattered group. Some going to the right, some going to the left. We'll see which one will pay off. It might be the left hand side in downwind, as it corresponds to the right hand side in the upwind that paid off in the last two races. But we will see. Now we're trying to follow the Gold Fleet downwind, but it will be pretty difficult to spot the sailors, as we need to see both the sail numbers and the country codes. Now in this race, the only sailors that we could spot in the top 10 of this morning were a sailor from Ukraine, that was first, and the third sailor from US. Now, as we're following the Gold Fleet going downwind towards the third mark, we can see that the breeze is actually pretty evenly distributed. We don't see any strong pressure in either sides. Obviously, we're a bit far away, so it is not for certain. But from what it looks like, in the downwind, the wind is pretty even. So it also comes down to the technique of the sailors and in which position they manage to get around the round marking, as having the room makes a big difference, especially in big fleets like this. So they have to sail as fast as possible and find a good spot around the marking. And that is usually why they split into two groups. The ones being on the very right-hand side, trying to get the room for the right mark, and the same thing goes for the left side, as they are able to choose their own marks. So now we're going to try to spot any of the sailors. Now today we weren't really able to spot the Swedish sailor that was in second position. So we don't really know how he sailed today, but he was very close with the Ukrainian sailor. So today, as he went out, he was racing for the gold, but it is a very mixed group, anything could happen, and you know what happened in the top three. But it is very fair to say that the top 10 has changed quite dramatically. Now, the sailors that were in 5th, 6th, and 7th position that actually raced quite well in the first race of the day should have been in a better position in the leaderboard. However, in this race, we haven't spotted any of them. So, depending on what they're doing in this race, they might be in top 5, but we need to see what happens. Because what happened today is that in the first race, the top 10 of that race was pretty different from the top 10 overall in the results. And honestly, what we're seeing in the second race of the day is the top 10 is also quite different from both today's results and the first race of the day. So the leaderboard has switched quite a lot in the first race, but once again in the second race. And honestly, every single point counts. So even if someone is having had a bad start, bad mark rounding, going downwind, any points they can get will be beneficial from them. Or like any point they can save, because in sailing, the least point you have, the better it is. Unlike many other sports. So now we just saw that the top 3 has rounded the mark. Now they're going upwind, but we still can't really read. We assume that the first sailor was from the US, and from the shape, from the colors of his sails, I assume that it's still the same sailor that is leading. And he was in the 20th position this morning. It looks like he is once again choosing the right-hand side of the course, which is one that paid off in the first upwind and also in the last race. For the girls, we only saw the Turkish girl that was leading after the first race, but we also need to see where is the Greek girl to see what are the points, and also the third girl from Brazil. But from the first race, it looked like the fight was mostly between the Greek and the Turkish sailor for the title of Girls World Champion. Now that the majority of the group rounded the marks, we can see that the picture looks like the majority of them goes to the right-hand side. It looks like a line, and then there's also a small group going to the left. Not many sailors are choosing the middle, which is actually pretty common, but yes, when the situation is like this, it is harder for the positions to change a lot if they're all going to the same side. But now they start attacking, so we will see what happens. But from the top 10, from the sailors that we're following, we only saw the Ukrainian sailor that was in first position this morning. However, he did not have a great race in the first race, so we're pretty sure that he is not leading anymore. But depending on how bad he was in the first race and how great he'll score this one, and obviously what other sailors are doing, we'll see what he'll finish at the end. But right now we're watching the very last leg of the gold group of the 2022 Optimist World Champion, which means that at the finish line we will know who is the world champion overall, who's the world champion in girls, and the top 20, which will be awarded tonight. So this is the last 10 minutes that matters for the results. Unfortunately, this is the closest look we can get, as sailing is a great sport, but honestly, for watching, it is very problematic. And having a live stream that can go this close is pretty rare. But as you can see, even one of the best opportunities to watch the race for fleet races is pretty difficult to watch from the beginning to the end, and to see the sailors and to spot and to calculate. Even for the coaches is not the easiest, but especially for a big media boat, we cannot get any closer. So this is the best we have. Now, we just received the results after the first race of the day. Now, the Ukrainian sailor, Daniel, is still leading with only 1 point with the sailor from USA, James. They have, the Ukrainian sailor have 75 points and the American one have 76. So, honestly, this race will determine who will be the champion because both of them were going in top 10 of this fleet. So as they're getting closer, we will see who's doing better. Then a third following sailor who did pretty well in the last race, followed by the Ukrainian sailor and the Thai sailor. So as we said, they were going to get better in the leaderboard, and that's what happened. So the top 5 is Ukraine, USA, Italy, Ukraine, and Thailand. That's followed by the Swedish sailor that we're talking about. He was second this morning. Now he's in 6th position. Followed by another Swedish sailor. And then we have the Lithuanian sailor in 8th position that was in 4th this morning with just a little point gap with the first one. And then we have a Brazilian sailor in 9th position, in 10th position. So we have the Norwegian, Danish sailors that dropped from the top 10, but they're following in 11th and 13th position. Looking to the girls, after the first race, in first position, we have the Turkish sailor, Medine, that is in 28th position, and she's leading in the girls. The second girl is the Greek sailor. In 27th position. And looking for the third girl. The third girl is also from Greece, and she's in... just a second. From Greece. So we will see what happens after the second race. We saw that the girl from Brazil is no longer in the top 3 of girls. So right now we can say, especially among the top 3, the Ukrainian, American, and Italian, they're very, very close. Between the first and the third, 5 points. So this race will be crucial to determine the medals of this race. So for the top 3 overall, at the second mark, we could only spot the American and the Ukrainian sailors. They were doing good. We could not see where the Italian sailor is. So depending when he is, we will see if he's still competing for the gold medal or not. Now the gold fleet is coming towards the finish line. They're still pretty far away, so we cannot see the positions of the sailors. But once we do that, we can start right away to calculate who is the new world champion. And for the girls, it looks like it is now really in between the Turkish girl and the Greek girl, as they are close to each other and the third girl is pretty far away. So we will also look at them to see who's the new world champion in the girls. Now coming towards the finish line, we still have the American sailor that is leading, followed by a Czech sailor. They were both not in top 10, but they will obviously go way ahead in the leaderboard right now. Now we will especially look out for Ukraine 274, USA 21594, and Italy 9712 that are in top 3 with pretty close points. Now in second position we have Czech sailor, and in third we have a sailor from Thailand, but it is not the one that is currently in fifth position. Once again we have the sailor from Chile. He had a great performance today with the first and the fourth. Now, coming up, we have the Thailand 1895 in fifth position, and Lithuania in sixth position. Then we have Mexico, Sweden, two sailors from Sweden. We're still looking out for the Ukrainian and the American sailors. But it looks like the sailor from Thailand might have done a great... Now we'll have to calculate the points and see where the top 3 is. And also the fourth sailor, that is 311 from Ukraine. Okay, Ukraine 311 just crossed the finish line somewhere along between 10 and 15 position, I believe. Okay, now we're having the first girl in the leaderboard from Turkey crossing the line. It is very close with the finish line numbers. I don't leaderboard without knowing for sure. But we are still not seeing the American and the Ukrainian sailors crossing the finish line. They were doing pretty good, so I believe we just missed them crossing the finish line. Yeah, I think the Ukrainian sailor already crossed it. Now let's look at the point gap. It looks like the sailor from Thailand just finished fifth in this race had a 15 points gap with Ukraine. That was the first sailor. Okay, so now we're seeing Greece 29:40 that is crossing the finish line. That was in second position in the girls, which means unless there's a protest or black flag, the world champion in the girls is Medine Hava Tatlıcan from Turkey, and that is first for Turkey. That is the first time the world champion in Optimist girls. So congratulations to her, and we will need a bit more details to see who is the overall in Optimist. It looks like the sailor from Thailand has a good chance, but in the round marking we saw the American boy that was also in a pretty good position, and he only had one with the Ukrainian. So I think we probably missed him going towards the finish line, but from the looks of it, he should have finished in the top. So from not being very sure, he might be champion. It will be probably pretty close between the American, Ukrainian, and the Thai sailor. The sailor from Lithuania also sailed, but there is a large gap in points. Yes, he has over 35 points of gap with the first sailor. So I don't really think the Lithuanian sailor is in the top 3. But once again, we will have to check the results to see what really happened. The leaderboard has changed quite a bit. Now we know the world champion in girls, if there isn't any major changes, is from Turkey. The second in girls is from Greece. So congratulations to both of them. And to see what are the results in the overall category in top 3, we'll have to wait just a bit. Yeah, next to the finish line, we can already see a big Turkish flag that is on the sail of Medine, the girl who just became world champion in the girls category. Putting up the country flag on the sail is pretty common in European and world championships, as well as other continent championships, obviously. So if we see another flag coming up, I think we would also know who is the world champion in overall. But they might also be doing the calculations because in overall it is a bit more messy than what happened in the girls. And that was the end. That was the final race in the Gold Fleet in the Optimist World Championship. So that was the final race for the top 70 sailors in the world in Optimist. Well, congratulations to all of them. We are still at live. We will learn who's also the world champion and top 3 in the boys. And come back for the results. Now the sailors of the Gold Fleet are going towards the shore. Now we can also see that the Greek sailor also has her flag on the sail, as she is the second in girls. As I said, that is pretty common in sailing to have the flag of your country on your sail. Those were the two positions that we spotted during this race, the first and second position in the girls. However, I'm still waiting for another flag to come up, especially to realize what happened in the overall fleet. But I think I'm not the only one who's confused about the results, because the only flags that I can see are the Turkish and the Greek ones. There are in first and second positions in the girls. They had a way closer race, and I mean, they were in first position, just the opposite this morning. But what really changed is the overall top 10 in the boys. Now, for not being sure, from what I saw, I think it is a close race between the American, the Ukrainian, the Thai, and the Italian sailors for the top 4. We'll see what are the exact positions for overall, and obviously it also depends if there is anyone who's black flag or has a protest that we cannot see from here. But looking only at the finish line and from today's position, those are the guesses that we have for overall. Currently, I'm still waiting to have more information about what happened in the overall fleet with the boys, and perhaps also the third girl. But in case I don't have them anytime soon, thank you so much for watching. Congratulations to all sailors, and this was the end of the 2022 Optimist World Champion, and we will soon know who will be crowned the overall World Champion of this year. The award ceremony will be at 9 p.m. today at the Bodrum Castle. And yes, thank you so much for watching. Congratulations to all sailors. We saw a very tight race today where the leaderboard has changed. We had very nice breeze. We had 2 races, so we completed all races, which is a pretty good achievement for a race that is this long. In sailing, as it depends on the wind that we cannot control, and there are many situations in which we cannot complete races in a day because there isn't enough wind, too much wind, or the wind is too shifty. So this was a great race with great conditions, and well, stay tuned for what happens in the overall. Once again, congratulations to all sailors. Thank you so much for watching. Hope you had a good time watching the sailors. That is pretty difficult, unfortunately. And and have a nice day. Thank you. Our live stream will soon end, so I just want to end on the point of congratulating Medine Hava Tatlıcan from Turkey for being the world champion in girls, and Krisula Kanelu Kokinaki from Greece for being second in the girls. I'm very sorry if I just butchered your name, by the way. But these are the only results that we know so far, so I just wanted to congratulate them. And then also to big congratulations to the top three in the that I still don't know their names. But yes, thank you so much, and congratulations to the medalists.